Right, it has now gone 6 o'clock, so we will make a start on this evening's meeting. Thank you very much everyone for attending. The first item is the evacuation procedure, and as we do have a member of the public here who isn't as familiar with it as the rest of us are, I suppose the Chief Exec would want me to read it out. A fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm does sound, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lifts. Once out of the building, please gather outside the Lloyd's Bank on the opposite side of the road. Exit by the door by which you entered the room or by the fire exits which are clearly indicated by the standard green fire exit signs. If you need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourself known to a member of staff. Please also make sure all your mobile phones are turned off or set to silent. I would also advise that the meeting is being live streamed on our YouTube channel and will be recorded also for the YouTube channel for future viewers if they wish. Do we have any apologies? No, everyone's here. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations beyond those which are printed in the agenda? No. In which case we'll move on to the minutes. Is everyone happy that I sign them off as a true and accurate record of the last meeting? Okay, thank you. Before I move on to the next agenda item, I would just like to put it on public record and bring to everyone's attention that former member of the old Nuneaton Borough Council and Member of Parliament for Nuneaton, Lewis Stevens, MBE, has passed away recently. And he served as Member of Parliament from 1983 to 1992. And as I said, he did serve on the old Nuneaton Borough Council before we merged in 1974. So could I just ask that we have a moment's silence in memory of Lewis Stevens, please? Okay, thank you very much, everyone. That moves us on to agenda item number 5, which is public consultation. I'm aware of one public speaker, which is Mrs. Condacor, on agenda items number 6 and 7, so I will take them in the order that they are printed on the agenda. So that leads us on to agenda item number 6, which is the implementation to the Election Act 2022 and voter ID for NBBC. That's Councillor Croft.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is a slightly unusual report to bring before Cabinet because it doesn't require us to make any sort of decision. It briefs us on the upcoming changes from the Government's Election Act. This is not council policy, it is the law of the land, and we have to respond to it. The primary purpose of it is to tighten up some elements of the system which are open to abuse. So it places greater limits on things like proxy voting and the handling of postal votes, which could have been abused in the past. The headline changes will be the requirement from this year for photographic ID when voting in this country. That is to effectively prevent personation in elections. But because not everybody has photographic ID, we are required to provide free of charge voter authority certificates as a temporary measure. It also, which I'm particularly pleased about, Mr. Chairman, it also changes the voting system for the PCC elections to first past the post, because I'm a great believer that you don't fiddle with the results of an election because the loser doesn't like that they've lost. Now, a point to emphasise in this is that we do not have, or we are certainly not planning to have, any elections in this borough during 2023. So I would just like to reassure the public that they will not see, and I don't think the Prime Minister is going to call an early general election, they will not see the results of this act in their daily lives until the elections, which must be held next year. Our splendid head of elections will be doing work with North Warwickshire and getting some best practice guidance and absorbing their ideas in terms of the implementation of the Act, and he'll be bringing them back for us to implement ourselves. So I shall move the report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Croft, and I'm happy to second the report from the Chair. We have one public speaker on this, which is Mrs Condacor.
Thank you. Don't want to say a lot because obviously the council just have to implement it because it's been an act of parliament. But I just hope that you, as the leader of the council, have actually been in contact with the government and asking for more funding, because there's a lot of things which are going to create more work and, you know, shouldn't be down to just yet more that the council needs to spend because of government policy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any points of clarification to Mrs Condacor? No. Any non-cabinet member wish to speak? Councillor Condacor.
Before I speak, can I mention that the fire exit at the rear is actually locked, so if people could evacuate from the front and avoid using the back stairs. This clearly is a very bad idea to actually have voter ID in a way that actually will discriminate against some of the poorest and least able people, which is why we have a scheme to actually mitigate that by getting people registered with photo IDs via the council. The issues with that is it's very technologically biased. So a lot of the older people, people like my mother, won't be able to take their picture, go on a web form, etc. And particularly for my ward, which has a generally older population, I do fear some of the older people are going to be disenfranchised. And that is a dreadful thing to happen, people disenfranchised from voting. And they will actually probably be the least affluent people because they're the ones without the passports. They won't necessarily have had a driving licence. And with the poor bus services we have at the moment, we have a very low number of people with bus passes who really should have bus passes, but there isn't the service. In somewhere like London, bus passes for the older people are really, really common. Bus service in London, absolutely superb. But a lot of the forms of ID that the sort of Westminster bubble think we have won't always apply to some of the poorer parts of Weddington, Stockingford, Camphill, parts of Bedworth. There'll be places where there aren't necessarily good bus services, so that people won't have bus passes. And also the disabled. A lot of disabled people do not go on foreign holidays and they do not drive cars. And some of them aren't necessarily going to be that easily into all the technology. So I do hope we try and help people as much as possible and start this process early. Because the earlier we can start to tell people they'll need to look at this, the better. And particularly as there may be a general election this year, who knows how bad the state of the current country is going to be. It is well worth people being prepared so they can vote if they need to. On a few other matters, the disability access stuff is really good. We do need to improve our polling stations. But there's also things I really, really dislike, like people who've lived overseas for more than 15 years now being able to vote in this country. That is really quite strange when so many people in this country will not be able to vote because they don't have the right ID. People who've lived in tax haven somewhere for 20 years can still vote in the Bedworth Borough Council elections. Most bizarre.
Thank you, Councillor Condacor. Any points of clarification? No. I couldn't disagree with Councillor Condacor more on a number of his points. I don't believe that the Act is discriminatory in any shape or form. It's certainly not intended to be that, and this council will, of course, provide every support that it can to residents who need assistance. But surely it is right that one of the most fundamental things that you can do in this democracy, which is to vote, that you prove you are who you say you are. The current system, anyone can rock up to a polling station. I'm Joe Bloggs. I live at 25 Barchester Road. They just get issued with a ballot paper, as long as they appear to be male, although That may be making certain assumptions. There would be no reason whatsoever for a polling clerk, based on that evidence, to refuse a ballot paper. But they could be fraudulently claiming that they are that person to obtain a vote. We now have to provide evidence of who we are, who we say we are, if we pick up something as mundane as a parcel from Amazon at the Royal Mail depot. So surely it is not unreasonable to expect that the sanctity of the ballot box is protected as much as possible. So I am in favour of the idea. If you look at pages 25 and 26 of the agenda, it does actually give a wide range of forms of identity which can be used, and indeed this council can also provide them with the relevant electoral identity card that would be required. So I think if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear from these proposals. We have already, as I understand it, started promoting this through our online channels. I know I've seen them promoted when I look on Facebook. And we are in a very fortunate position that our head of elections doubles up with North Warwickshire Borough Council, who do have elections this year, and so we can learn the lessons of any teething problems from that election over the border. So I'm quite happy to support the recommendations. Anyone wish to come back? Councillor Croft.
Just to emphasise that we will be receiving grant funding from the government to implement the Act, and if it's not sufficient, we will be applying for more to cover our costs. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's actually quite a good idea. Having stood in a general election myself and only missed out by a couple of hundred votes, I was actually contacted by several people after that election saying they turned up to the polling station and their vote had already been cast. So I am 100% in favour of this. I also don't think that old people and disabled people are technically inept and unable to drive vehicles. I think that's a real stretch and a negative assumption, but it's not really surprising, is it? So either way,
Councillor Condacor, please be quiet.
Either way,
Please be quiet, Councillor Condacor. You know the rules. You've been here long enough. Councillor Golby.
either way, I think performing this, providing people with ID, you're quite right. You can't even go and collect a parcel from the post office without ID. There's very little you can do in that respect. And why should this be any different? Why should the ballot box be any different? So having had experience of a time when it would have probably been useful to have voter ID, I am very supportive of this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Golby. Any other member of Cabinet wish to speak? No, in which case we'll move to the vote on the recommendation, which is to note the report. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That is carried. Oh, and just to note that the rear fire exit has now been opened. A porter has been and opened the rear fire exit. That moves us on to agenda item number 7, which is Buttermere Recreation Ground redevelopment. Councillor Guttridge.
Thank you, Leader. Buttermere Recreation Ground is a public open space to the north of Nuneaton in St Nicholas Ward. Several housing allocations over the last few years for NBC and the local plan has been built near to the park over the last few years, and each has contributed money via 106 planning obligations to improve the park and mitigate any extra pressure capacity on the open space for increased use. MBBC are in receipt of this money and stated that the initial project scoping was consultation in 2022. I must just also say funding for the park is via 106 planning obligations, which are a legal agreement between MBBC and the developers, and money must be spent in accordance with these agreements. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Guttridge. Does that receive a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Markham. Mrs Condacor, you're down to speak as a member of the public.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously I'm very pleased to see these, planned improvements because, as far as I know, there's not been anything done to Buttermere Park since the Nicholas Park estate was actually built, and certainly a lot of the play equipment certainly looks very ancient. My main concerns really were just some of the things I couldn't see or need a bit more clarification from the plan that was attached. The design of the entrance, it says, would be to prevent motorcycle access. That's at the entrance at Buttermere Avenue. Now, I understand why you would want that, but it's really important that it doesn't stop just people with double buggies, mobility scooters and the like actually getting in. And the same round the other areas, sort of where it joins with Royal Park. On the plan it says location of enhanced safety measures, but didn't say at all what that was. Again, there needs to be that, sensible allowance is made so that cyclists can reach particularly the area for the teens, and also people again in mobility scooters and things. If we have these horrible A-frames, it really will not be disability DDA compliant. The other thing I couldn't see anywhere on there was where there would be access from the road for vehicles for maintenance and grass cutting. So I'd like some clarification as to exactly where that would be. Currently, it's further along on Buttermere Avenue, I think, but it wasn't, I couldn't see anything on the plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Condacore. Any points of clarification to Mrs. Condacore? No? In which case we'll move to any non-cabinet member. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. As the local member for the area, I think it was extremely appropriate that we did the consultation back last year. 347 respondents to that consultation. There was natural on-site consultation meeting with residents at the same time, and I think it was really useful that the information and what they're looking to achieve and what they require was produced from that. In relation to the concerns that have been raised, one in particular is the access, and more importantly, I won't say illegal access by quads and 4x4s, and worries by residents over the usage of the footpath as a racetrack. I understand that that's been picked up, and that the portfolio holder and the officers have had meetings or are having meetings with police and the relevant organisations to ensure that access to the park is DDA compliant, but also as best protected for the public and pedestrians and the users of the park as can be done safely, to ensure that it's not used as a racetrack. So I welcome the opportunity to have had that input. I welcome the funding that's come through from Royal Park and for this development. It's been really good that we've actually spent it in the St Nicholas area where it was needed. Whilst it's true that the equipment was somewhat dated, it was maintained, it was still working, all good working order. However, it does need updating. After 28 years, I welcome the funding that's come through, and I welcome the consultation that we've had and the opportunity to have input to that. So I would support the report as set out, Chairman, and hopefully the Cabinet will agree. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Clark. Any points of clarification to Councillor Clark? Not to Councillor Clark, but point of debate for later. Yeah, you can come up in at the end, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I had seen you, Councillor Condacore. Councillor Condacore.
It's great that this park's getting a makeover potentially, and there's a lot of money being collected from developers for all sorts of things. So I hope this is just the beginning of us starting to do the spending for our Section 106 infrastructure, because it's not just this park, and we've had been lots of comments about why this park, but there's actually a lot of other money that also needs to work their way through. So I hope we're progressing on that. But I would like to pick up the point about cycling again, because particularly with the football area there, a lot of kids will go and play football on the parky area. So when we start to design the area, we don't want the barriers that keep the cyclists out. What we want to do is actually make sure they dump them onto the grass effectively, so there's nowhere for a racetrack. But we do also need to make sure there is the ability for children to do things children do. And that is why very much a bit by the housing, the sort of, what would it be, the east end of the park really needs to be totally uncyclable and unmotorbikeable. But I do think we do need to look at where we get people who want to use the football pitches. And we were doing park run at the weekend, and it's a brilliant park, and there's a bit of path and there's some cycle racks. So I say, if you do want to sort of stay, I don't want people cycling through the park, have a few cycle racks by the end of the football pitch, well away from houses, and actually a point where people will put their bikes safely and locked up. So actually we're encouraging people to be responsible. I think that's very important. And finally, I must say about this document how unreadable it is with my eyesight now and this lighting. If you look at something like page 38, you've got white on an off-white little boxes. I mean, I don't know why you printed this, some of these pages, because the typeface is so small, and that you've done it in colours that are totally unreadable when printed in black and white. So I think in terms of disability acts, or disability acts, whatever, it would be nice if these sort of documents were made a bit more legible when printed at this size. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Condacourt. Any points of clarification to Councillor Condacourt? Right, Councillor Guttridge, you wish to come back?
Thank you, Leader. The entrances, I'm very keen on the entrances. In fact, subject to it going through tonight, I am meeting with the police on site and with officers to look at access for the park with the police. And I want it for disabled people with mobility scooters, children on bikes, mother and toddlers with pushchairs. I want them to be able to access that park freely. But I also want to make it safe for people not having to worry about the motorbikes coming in. Concerning one of the points about the access for the grounds maintenance, there will be access for the grounds maintenance team to get on there to cut the grass. Also, we've looked at fencing. Instead of, we'll put a small fence along, like they've got at the moment, like sleeping policemen, because if we put fencing along the side, children might kick the balls, and then we might have problems with the residents. We did go out to consultation on the 18th of June on site, where we had officers and members from the Red Kite. Even Marcus Jones attended, which I thank him for. And we listened to the residents. We have made various alterations to the plan of action, getting rid of the skateboard park, getting rid of the meeting centre and everything like that. There will be cycle racks positioned. We will look to widen. I want a wider path because I'm very keen on for everybody can use it, even people with disability scooters. If they're walking the dog, you know, we want them to be able to use it, pushchairs and prams and pushchairs. So I'm looking to put a wider path in there so that it's, you know, everybody can use the park. Other points there were. So I'm very keen to make it user-friendly for everybody. Even planting trees, wildflower meadows, looking at the play equipment, and I'm very keen on the play equipment. And the parks team tell me time and again, I want play equipment for all abilities, so that everybody could use the park. And I have worked with the residents, and we will carry on working with the residents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Guttridge. I would like to publicly put on record our thanks to the officers for all the hard work that they've put into this project. It has been a massive undertaking from such a small team, and they have worked quite hard on this, as indeed, I know he wouldn't say so himself, has Councillor Guttridge on this. He has taken the bull by the horns and really pushed it through to get it over the line. And also, local ward members, councillors Clark and Tromans have been involved at most of the steps of the way to actually have an input and represent their local residents and giving feedback to Councillor Guttridge and some positive challenge, I think it would be fair to say as well, to make sure we get the right outcome for the residents. I would also like to address some of these rumours and social media headlines, or why is it only an affluent area, or supposedly affluent area, which is getting new play equipment. Let's address this head on. St Nicholas and Weddington have seen unprecedented development over the past 10 years. I think by the time it's all said and done, there'll be close to 6,500, 7,000 new houses. How would you like that on your doorstep with no benefit to your existing community? And what this will do is provide fantastic new facilities that will last for the next 28 to 30 years, if not beyond, so that the existing residents and indeed the new residents can enjoy those facilities. I do sympathise with a lot of residents saying that their areas need some upgrades. I sympathise as a ward member myself that my area of Whitestone only has one fully functional park to service over 6,000 residents. One, whereas there are other wards in this borough which have 2, 3, 4 plus parks compared to others. So I don't agree with the politics of jealousy. It is about who has taken the brunt of the development should get the funding to counteract the harm that will be produced. And so I'm pleased that finally, now that we're getting the vast majority of all the Section 106 money in, because it has been staged as it comes in because of the trigger points. It's not just something you can click your fingers and deliver overnight. We needed to make sure that all the money was in, or as near as damn it, so that we can actually make sure that this is delivered. And I am looking forward to when that happens, and I know that the local ward members and the portfolio holder are looking forward to breaking ground and seeing this come to fruition. Any other member have anything they wish to say on the matter? No? In which case we'll move to the recommendations as printed. Please show in favour. That is carried. Thank you very much. Recommendations from overview and scrutiny panels. Nothing has been brought to my attention. Anything that you're aware of? No. No any other items have been raised, so I thank everyone for their attendance and declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much. We end the live stream, please.